mistakes. Now, Sean and I are attorneys, so our business is dealing with the world of mistakes. So we see lots of them. But today's topic is to boil down and talk about what we think are the top three legal pitfalls that we see real estate investors getting themselves into. So what we're going to do is take these by our top three. So Sean, give us an idea. What would you classify as big pitfall mistake number one?
So big pitfall mistake number one for me would be using the wrong purchase contract for the transaction.
Why do you think this mistake is so common? Is it that it's important to the investor to get the deal locked in, so we're just moving? Is speed just part of it?
Yeah, I think what happens is people find out about different transaction structures and they think, oh, well, if I can just get it under contract and lock down the property, then we could just figure it out later. Well, that works well if you have a very cooperative seller, and you probably are going to be able to close the transaction if the seller, is fully appreciates the arrangement and no issues come up. But you and I both know that that's not always how it happens, right? You have a seller who sometimes doesn't. They end up with cold feet, or they claim not to fully understand the transaction, and so in that case, if you don't have the right documents in place, you really don't have the enforcement mechanisms you need in order to accomplish the transaction based upon how it was contemplated at the time that the purchase contract was signed.
So the idea for a lot of the investors, or what you see, and I think is accurate, is we got to move now. Let's just lock this thing down, and we'll let the cards fall where they may. The problem is, if you've got an entirely different transaction in mind, let's say you just go online and you just pull some standard purchase contract or some standard purchase contract that is applicable within whatever state that you're doing this in. Not hard to find in Google, and you use that. Your ability to convert this to some other transaction, standard to maybe subject to or to wholesale or whatever, at that point, it's entirely reliant on the seller's agreement to do that, correct?
That's exactly right. Or you take that contract and then as the investor, the layperson, you try to then add these provisions in and you try to modify the contract. Unless you're precise with the language, you're going to end up with that same issue, which is, you know, you end up with a seller who ends up having cold feet, or for some reason is less cooperative than when the purchase contract was initially signed. Maybe they even disappear. And then it's, how do you close the transaction without
Right.
the right language in place?